We have gift baskets containing fruit, nuts, and of course the ever-popular cash basket. Please enter the first few letters of the gift basket you would like to receive. It seems you had some trouble with the keypad. I see what you were trying to type, and I will auto-correct it for you. Thank you for selecting Exotic Butters.
Hi, I'm nervous, and today I plan to do what I do best: overthink everything. We are going to take a look at the very first Tales from the Pizzaplex story, Frailty, and overanalyze every little detail. Just to reiterate as a disclaimer for my viewers who may misunderstand the purpose of this video, I am intentionally overanalyzing this story. This isn't one of those I solved everything with this one small detail everyone missed kind of video. I simply really like this story, and I want to dive in deep because there are some interesting things about it I think would be fun to talk about. I'm having fun, and I hope you'll join me. If you find yourself enjoying my ramblings, consider liking the video, subscribing, and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. Some people during my premieres have said they forget to comment, so this is your reminder. Without further ado, let's get overanalyzing. To start off, let me summarize this story for everyone who hasn't read the books in a while or simply isn't interested in doing so. Frailty is a story about a high school-aged girl named Jessica, who is, aptly, frail, with thick, long black hair that hangs over her pale face. She works as a janitor at a local hospital, but that isn't quite where this story begins. It begins on a road at the scene of a car wreck. A teenager has crashed his vehicle into a tree, and paramedics are attempting to revive him, but fail. They are lamenting over this fact when they notice a figure hovering over him with a knife. The paramedics tell the figure to get away from him, and after a moment, the boy begins to breathe again. It is later, after we've been properly introduced to Jessica, that we learn she wears a heart-shaped pendant around her neck, and when she scrapes bits of it off onto people who are sick or injured, they are miraculously healed. This phenomenon is never explained, but Jessica does feel it is her purpose to help as many children as she can. That's why she took the job in the children's wing of the hospital. However, every time she scrapes a bit of her pendant off, she herself seems to wither away a little bit more. The mystery of these suddenly recovered children is not one that seems to bother the hospital staff. They are simply happy to see their patients feeling better. The mystery that does concern them, though, is the random metal junk that has been showing up with increased frequency throughout the children's wing of the hospital. Cans, gears, pieces of old bicycles, always metal and always old. Jessica, the good janitor that she is quick to find and dispose of these pieces. At school, Jessica is assigned a project wherein she needs to find a partner, and together their assignment is to build a mini robot that can perform a simple task. The new kid, Robert, offers to be her partner, and he doesn't seem fazed by her ghoulish appearance that often keeps other people from approaching Jessica. Over the next few weeks, they work on the robot together, and Robert slowly pulls Jessica out of the shadows, where she has long preferred to be. Jessica has, for quite some time, done everything she can to go completely unnoticed. She used to only care about being popular, beautiful, and stylish, but things changed after she made a bad choice. She never specifies exactly what it was, but just that it was wrong. Now, she would often go to the chapel in the hospital she worked at and pray while holding her necklace and asking to be able to keep fulfilling her purpose. But now, after meeting Robert, who has been so kind to her and even asked her to prom, she is beginning to question if maybe just once she could act like a normal teenager again. She visits the chapel, asking the priest there if it's selfish of her to want to go to prom, to want to do something for herself. He tells her it's okay, and she decides to go. As the night draws closer, Jessica, sleeping in the mausoleum of a cemetery, has a horrific nightmare wherein her arm is ripped off by a robot she knows, and it steals her pendant. She wakes up and nothing has changed, but she is shaken up. Around the same time she started her project with Robert, Jessica also meets another girl around her age at the hospital, who is getting treatment for her illness. Her name is April, and she loves hearing about Jessica's prom preparations, allowing herself to live vicariously through her. Jessica is a little troubled as she's chosen to attend prom over helping April, whose health is quickly declining, because she can tell there is not enough pendant left to do both. At the prom, she feels like a normal teenager again, dancing with Robert, who then leans in for a kiss. As their lips meet, Robert feels something on his face. It's grease. He spits on the floor, and everyone around them looks at Jessica, horrified. She can tell her time is coming to an end and rushes to the hospital, running past the staff and locks herself in April's hospital room. The staff breaks in as quickly as they can, but when they do, Jessica is gone. All that is there in April's room with her is a pile of metal junk and flecks of silver resting on April's body, whose heartbeat miraculously steadies. I find this story haunting in a beautiful way. Jessica is clearly a character fraught with guilt, and her only wish is to atone for what she has done and be a selfless person. However, the more she helps others, the closer she comes to never being able to help anyone else. And it's clear that the loneliness she's experienced has deeply affected the way she moves through the world, not to mention the fact that she is a being made entirely out of junkyard scraps. Her plight is believable. Sacrifice her final moments to help someone else, or allow herself to feel human one last time. It wouldn't take a careful reader to recognize the similarities between this story and the Fazbear Frights story, To Be Beautiful. I will quickly summarize this story, but Daco has a very in-depth summary on his channel if you need something more robust. To Be Beautiful is the second Fazbear Frights story that directly follows Into the Pit. Sarah is our main character, and she believes herself to be ugly, wishing desperately to be beautiful. She finds a robot that is basically a skinny circus baby, though that name isn't specifically mentioned. We would find out that this robot's name, or at least the name she gives, is Eleanor. She is grateful to be rescued by Sarah and offers to grant her a wish. Sarah's wish is obvious, and Eleanor happily grants it. She gives Sarah a heart-shaped pendant and tells her to never take it off. Over the next few days, Sarah is being noticed by the popular girls and herself as being what she sees as beautiful. However, one day she trips at school and the necklace falls off, revealing her true self, an amalgamation of metal junkyard scraps. She runs home screaming and discovers that Eleanor has been slowly replacing her limbs with junk every night as she sleeps. Eleanor transforms into Sarah's original self, who she now realizes was never ugly at all, and Sarah is left as a heap of junk, unable to feel or think anything at all. It is fascinating that these stories would be so similar, and that Frailty would be the very first story that we read in this new series. I first wondered if this is what Scholastic may have meant when they purported tales to be drawing from every corner of the franchise's canon. But either way, I just found it so interesting that the very first tale story is a full callback to Fazbear Frights, and a story with little game lore relevance, but also one that introduced us to the, well, potentially unfortunate big bad of the Frights series. Eleanor is far from a fan favorite, so why put a reference to her first appearance from Frights in the new books straight out of the gate? The only reason I could surmise is that this could have been a very slight nod to what would be coming next with the Mimic. Eleanor was a master of mimicking after all. She mimics Sarah, then later we see her mimic a homeless woman as well as the daughter of scientist Dr. Talbert, who also created the infamous heart-shaped pendant. The invention of the pendant itself is also of note here, because every time I've heard someone talk about the pendant, They attribute its mimic ability to an illusion disc. However, no matter how hard I look, I can't find evidence that the pendant possesses any tech in it whatsoever. It is entirely charged with remnant. Specifically, the remnant of Dr. Talbert's daughter, Renelle, or her positive memories. Renelle was sick as a child, and Dr. Talbert was afraid of losing her, so he created a necklace out of the remnant of the good memories of her. Now, if you haven't read these stories, you may have thought Renelle recovered due to the pendant, but that doesn't seem to be the case. She's only gifted the pendant after her health improves. But that doesn't mean that throughout Fazbear Frights, we don't see the healing properties of remnant itself. So, we know the necklace itself and the remnant it contains are capable of creating illusions due to the happy memories inside it, and it is capable of healing people. This, along with the fact that Jessica is made of junk the same way Sarah is, pretty much confirms it's the same pendant. But if we follow the storyline of Frights, it's fairly impossible that Jessica should even possess this necklace. For everything Frights stumbles on throughout the finale, it does seem to give the necklace a resolution that doesn't lie with Eleanor. I thought of the possibility that this could be a prequel story somehow that took place before the end of Frights. But someone at the hospital during Frailty mentions the Pizzaplex, so it's definitely after. It seems the only way Jessica could find herself with this pendant is if Eleanor managed to escape her mind prison, long story, somehow puts herself back together, tracks down the detective who ultimately ended up with the pendant, then found Jessica, granted her wish, and left the pendant with her? I guess maybe she didn't need it anymore since she was infused with remnant by Dr. Talbert, but she was also burned, so is that remnant still even viable? And if she was still able to create illusions without the pendant, why would she need to find it and then trick Jessica? What could she possibly gain? Did she lose the ability to mimic the other people she'd been able to before, so she has to start over collecting? It's genuinely perplexing. I first considered the possibility of Jessica being Renelle, Dr. Talbert's daughter, because she has black hair and brown eyes, just like Jessica. It's curly hair, but I thought maybe the illusion power of the necklace was waning, which was causing the hair to, lose its bounce. And if Jessica wanted to hide, perhaps the illusion would offer long, straight hair to cover her face rather than to show it. But this would require that in the original Fazbear Fright stories, at some point, Eleanor finds Renelle, pulls off this stunt, and then never mentions it. Besides, there would ultimately have to be a second necklace at some point, because Renelle objectively doesn't have it by the end of Fazbear Frights. Detective Larson does. I then considered the possibility of Jessica being Eleanor, somehow doing the aforementioned, but now wanting to atone for her sins. But that doesn't align at all with what Jessica herself says throughout the story. She never mentions homicidal and sociopathic tendencies, just that she valued popularity and beauty over being a good person, and it led her to make a wrong choice. Bizarrely enough, what seems to be most likely is that Jessica is really Sarah. Now listen and remember, it ultimately doesn't matter at all who Jessica is. This is a story in tales that doesn't seem particularly lore-heavy by any means, but when I read the story, I couldn't help but fixate on every detail. It's a well-written tale, and I found myself empathizing so heavily with Jessica throughout it. I just wanted to understand her more. We know Sarah's backstory fits Jessica perfectly. We know the necklace creates an illusion, and if it's really based off of Renelle's happiness, it would make sense for it to give Sarah black hair to match Renelle's. It would further make sense if the necklace was also infused with agony, which is depicted as black, because by this point, Sarah would have probably felt a lot of agony, especially after realizing she'd been ripped apart by Eleanor in her sleep. The only thing we have to question is how in the world did she get the pendant back? It would be terribly far-fetched to imagine the heap of junk Sarah became was not collected by her mother and thrown out. But if it was, it would end up exactly where Sarah originally found Eleanor, in the junkyard. Jessica, in Frailty, is absolutely terrified of the junkyard. When Robert wants to go there to look for parts for their robot project, she outright refuses. It is the only time we see her in the story be so stern. Now, the simplest explanation would, of course, be that she's scared of the junkyard because she's made of junk. Maybe she fears her true body is there, or that the illusion will somehow fall apart. But if we assume that Jessica is Sarah, of course, she wouldn't dare to venture where she believes Eleanor could be lurking. And the place that she sat for who knows how long is a pile of junk. And for those who believe that Sarah dies at the end of To Be Beautiful, I do just want to pose this one thing. Are you suggesting her soul lives inside of the heart pendant, or that Sarah died long before the end of the story, once she was mostly junk? Because the pile of junk that is in effect Sarah has all of her memories and all of her thoughts. She's not a robot because she's just stuff. So it's, I think, fairly safe to assume that her soul, in some form or fashion, or the agony that is left over after having her body parts ripped off, is possessing that hunk of junk, or the necklace, which is somehow capable of animating this hunk of junk. But I'll let you ponder on that and we'll move on. Okay, assuming any of you are still with me, you're probably thinking, none of this answers how she got the necklace back. And you're right. Really, the only way, as far as I can think, is if Detective Larson somehow found the exact heap of junk that was Sarah and put the necklace on it, allowing it to reform into Sarah herself. I know, how excruciatingly unlikely. My only potential explanation that doesn't involve sheer dumb luck is that Sarah never did make her way to the junkyard after the illusion broke, that instead her disappearance sparked an investigation, and that heap was taken into evidence as the only thing that seemed out of place the day she disappeared. A trail of metal junk led into Sarah's home and here to this pile. And Detective Larson, after he got the necklace, heard the singing. Yeah, the necklace faintly sings to Larson at the very end of the story. And that somehow leads him to the pile of metal scraps that were taken into evidence. Why would he reanimate the metal girl and let her run off into the night? I don't know. And really, the only other explanation is the one I mentioned before about Eleanor, except instead of finding a new girl to torment, she reformed Sarah for some reason. My best guess is that the detective took pity on Sarah and allowed her to escape. Maybe he felt like it was the right thing to do. Maybe she begged him to let her go, promising to live a good life. And hey, maybe it's just that the author of this story, Kelly Para, really liked the pendant and wanted to write a story where it was finally used for good instead of evil, and someone with the same trials as Sarah was able to find a way to be at peace. Whatever the reason, Frailty is a beautiful first story for Tales from the Pizzaplex, despite being so unconnected to the Plex itself and its strange many connections to the Fazbear Frights series. I think it perfectly mirrors what we see take place in the new Steel Wool Studio games and even in FNAF 6 to a degree. We see characters who seek to do good, to heal and help others in a way that ultimately leads to self-sacrifice. And whether you think Cassie's dad is Bonnie Bro, or Edwin, or Michael, the character is seeking atonement in the same way Jessica is. Their priorities were misplaced, and it led to a wrong decision that altered the course of the rest of their lives. In my eyes, it's Bonnie Bro, Jeremy, the boy who helped lift Crying Child into the jaws of Fredbear, and the man who went so deep into the glitch trap virus, but it nearly took his life. Or maybe it did. Either way, it seems our Help Wanted 2 protagonist is similarly confused about what they are supposed to do, and trying desperately at every turn to make the right choice. Now, before I wrap today, I want to leave you all with a few questions, as it wouldn't be truly overanalyzing if I didn't say everything that's been on my mind. So for those of you who believe Tales is canon to the FNAF games, do you believe every story is canon, or just some? Because if this story is canon, Remnant's in-game abilities are pretty wild, and it also begs the question, at what point does Jessica's human soul fuse to the metal that was her body? Remnant, by way of this necklace, has absolutely miraculous healing and illusion abilities, but also the power to animate metal, or at the very least, aid in a person's soul or their agony being transferred into the metal so that it may be possessed as multiple haunted objects working in conjunction with one another. And if you don't believe that Tales is canon, or at the very least that not every story is, does this particular story lead you to believe that Frights and Tales take place within the same universe? It is objectively just one of many stories, but the mechanics and the appearance of the necklace are so similar that I have to ask. Regardless of what you believe, I appreciate you all joining me for potentially the first of many overanalyzations of FNAF stories. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like the video, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to become a part of the nervous system. Please remember to turn on bell notifications so you get notified every time I put out a new video. I upload every week, go live on Wednesdays and Fridays, and upload shorts as I am inspired to do so. I'll be back next week, but if you can't wait, there are videos on the screen right now just for you. Okay, bye! For being what over the next few days.